These are unbelievable tragedies of human history. The moments so shocking, they still shape the world we live in today. Let's dive right into it.
The sinking of the RMS Titanic occurred on April 15th, 1912, when the British passenger liner was sunk in the North Atlantic Ocean during its voyage to New York City. The ship, built by the White Star Line, was the largest and most luxurious of its time, and was considered unsinkable due to its advanced safety features, including 16 watertight compartments. However, these compartments did not extend high enough to fully prevent flooding in the event of a breach. On the night of April 14th at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic struck an iceberg. This iceberg scraped along the ship's starboard side, creating a series of small punctures across several watertight compartments. Although the ship initially appeared stable, it soon became clear that the first 5 compartments were flooding, more than the ship could stay afloat with. Over the next few hours, the Titanic began to sink, and despite distress calls, the nearest ship capable of assisting, the Carpathia, was too far away to arrive in time. The sinking was worsened due to a shortage of lifeboats, as there were only 20 on board, which was enough for only half of the passengers and crew, and this was due to outdated seagoing regulations. Additionally, many lifeboats were launched only partially filled, as many people hesitated to leave the ship. Out of approximately 2,224 people on board, only 706 survived, with this disaster claiming the lives of over 1,500 passengers and crew members, most of them being from the ship's lower class compartments, and also crew who had less access to lifeboats. The sinking of the Titanic remains one of the deadliest tragedies in history that have occurred in the ocean, and it led to many changes in seagoing safety regulations, including requirements for sufficient lifeboats and the establishment of the International Ice Patrol to monitor iceberg threats in the North Atlantic.
Oh, crazy. I've never heard of the Ice Patrol before. Imagine a whole organization just to track icebergs after the Titanic went down. Sounds like a weird mix of Coast Guard and weather report, but it actually changed ocean travel forever. Makes you wonder what modern disasters will end up creating the next safety patrol.
The Halifax explosion occurred on December 6, 1917 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and remains one of the most devastating explosions in history. The disaster began when 2 ships collided in the narrow Halifax harbor, the French cargo ship Mont Blanc and the Norwegian ship Imo. The Mont Blanc was loaded with highly volatile materials, including TNT, benzol, and picric acid. As the 2 ships maneuvered through the harbor's narrows, miscommunications and navigation errors led to a collision. The impact ignited the explosions on the Mont Blanc, and the crew, realizing the incoming danger, abandoned the ship, but the burning vessel drifted towards the busy waterfront, drawing in a crowd of onlookers unaware of the danger. At 9:04 a.m., the Mont Blanc exploded with catastrophic force. The blast leveled much of the northern part of Halifax and the neighboring community of Richmond. The explosion released an estimated energy equivalent to 2.9 kilotons of TNT, creating a powerful shockwave that shattered windows as far as 50 miles away and generated a massive tsunami in the harbor. Over 2,000 people were killed, including many children and workers in nearby factories and homes. Approximately 9,000 people were injured, some blinded by flying glass or trapped under debris. The explosion also destroyed 12,000 buildings, leaving thousands of people homeless. Hospitals were overwhelmed, and relief efforts were quickly mobilized from across Canada and the United States. The Halifax explosion prompted significant advances in emergency management and disaster response, and it remains a defining moment in the city's history.
That's insane. Halifax basically got hit with a man-made nuke before nukes were even invented. The shockwave blew out windows 50 miles away like nature itself was gossiping about the explosion. And the wild part? Crowds actually gathered to watch the burning ship before it detonated. It's the 1917 version of people filming disasters on their phones, except back then, curiosity literally killed thousands.
The Holocaust was the systematic state-sponsored genocide of 6 million Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators during World War II. It began with the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in 1933, whose anti-Semitic ideology blamed Jewish people for Germany's economic problems and portrayed them as a threat to the Aryan race. After gaining power, the Nazis implemented increasingly oppressive laws, such as the Nuremberg Laws of 1935, which stripped Jews of their rights, and launched a campaign of widespread persecution. The situation worsened after the outbreak of World War II in 1939, when Nazi Germany began its conquest of Europe. Jews in occupied territories were rounded up and forced into ghettos under horrible conditions, and in 1941, Nazi leaders initiated the final solution, which was a plan to exterminate the Jewish population. This led led to the construction of extermination camps such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor, where millions of Jews were systematically murdered in gas chambers. Aside from Jews, the Nazis targeted other groups that they deemed undesirable, including Romani people, disabled individuals, Slavs, political descendants, and LGBTQ individuals. The Holocaust brutality extended to mass shootings, death marches, forced labor, starvation, and medical experiments, leaving millions of victims dead or deeply scarred. By the time the Holocaust ended in 1945, with the Allied forces liberating the concentration camps, approximately 6 million Jews, 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population, had been killed. In addition, 5 million non-Jewish victims perished as well, and the Holocaust remains one of the most horrific atrocities in human history, with the survivors' testimonies serving as a reminder of the dangers of hatred and intolerance.
Survivor testimonies aren't just memories, they're flashing warning lights for any era that thinks it can't happen here. The Holocaust wasn't chaos, it was paperwork, timetables, and engineers optimizing murder. From the Nuremberg laws to the final solution, a modern state turned prejudice into industry. Think about this, when propaganda meets bureaucracy and people get numbed by normal, atrocity scales fast. The scariest monster is the one wearing a badge, carrying a clipboard.
The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, the United States dropped the bombs to hasten Japan's surrender and avoid a costly invasion, as the Pacific War had been prolonged and brutal, with Japan showing no signs of surrender. On August 6, 1945, the US dropped an atomic bomb, codenamed Little Boy, on Hiroshima, which was a major Japanese military and industrial hub. The bomb, containing uranium-235, detonated at 8:15 a.m., releasing an explosion equivalent to about 15 kilotons of TNT. The blast obliterated the city, instantly killing an estimated 70 to 80,000 people, with many more dying from injuries and radiation sickness in the days and months that followed, bringing the death toll to over 140,000 by the end of 1945. The intense heat and radiation caused horrific burns, while the shockwave leveled buildings, leaving survivors with long-term health effects. 3 days later, on August 9th, the United States dropped a second bomb called Fat Man on Nagasaki, a city with significant industrial importance. This plutonium bomb was even more powerful, with a yield of about 21 kilotons, though the city's mountainous terrain limited the destruction. An estimated 40,000 people were killed instantly, with the total number of deaths reaching around 70,000 by the end of the year. The bombings prompted Japan to surrender on August 15, 1945, and officially bringing World War II to an end. These events raised ethical debates about the use of nuclear weapons and sparked the Cold War arms race. In total, the two bombings killed over 200,000 people and left lasting scars on Japan's landscape, health, and society. The survivor suffering and the bombing's global impact continue to influence discussions on war and peace today.
Hiroshima wasn't just history's deadliest physics experiment, it was also the moment the world realized scientists don't just make cool light bulbs. Sometimes they accidentally reinvent apocalypse mode. Fun fact, the Little Boy bomb was so primitive, it basically worked on the slam two chunks of uranium together really hard principle, like the world's worst Lego set. And the fireball? Hotter than the surface of the sun. Imagine inventing daylight savings but permanent. That's nuclear power for you.
The Texas City disaster, which occurred on April 16, 1947, remains one of the deadliest industrial accidents in United States history. It began when a French cargo ship, the SS Grand Camp, docked in the port of Texas City and caught fire while it was being loaded with ammonium nitrate fertilizer, a highly explosive material commonly used in agriculture. The fire was discovered around 8 a.m., and despite efforts to extinguish it, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. As the fire intensified, the captain ordered the hatches sealed in an attempt to starve the flames of oxygen, but this proved to be ineffective. At 9:12 a.m., the ammonium nitrate ignited, triggering a massive explosion that obliterated the Grand Camp and sent a towering mushroom cloud into the sky, with the blast being heard up to 150 miles away. The explosion unleashed devastating shockwaves, destroying nearby buildings, homes, and factories, and the docks were completely leveled, with nearby oil refineries and chemical plants catching fire, worsening the disaster. The explosion also launched flaming debris, including parts of the Grand Camp, into surviving areas, igniting further fires. A second explosion occurred the next day when another ship, the SS High Flyer, also loaded with ammonium nitrate, detonated, and the combined blast resulted in widespread destruction across Texas City. This disaster killed an estimated 581 people, including firefighters, dock workers, and onlookers, and also injured over 5,000 more. Many of the victims were never identified, and the explosions left thousands of people homeless, with hundreds of buildings being destroyed, and also causing millions of dollars in damage.
Texas City City, 1947, was the day fertilizer went from makes crops grow to oops, made a mushroom cloud. Fun fact, ammonium nitrate had already blown up a French munitions plant in 1921, killing 500, but apparently history class didn't get the memo. The Texas blast was so loud, pilots thought it was an atomic test. Imagine checking your farm supply order and realizing you accidentally bought Apocalypse bulk pack.
The Bhopal gas tragedy, one of the world's worst industrial disasters, occurred on the nights of December 2nd to 3rd, 1984 in Bhopal, India. It began at the Union Carbide India Limited pesticide plant, where a highly toxic chemical called methylisocyanate, also known as MIC, was being stored in large quantities for the production of pesticides. Poor maintenance, faulty safety systems, and inadequate training of staff created dangerous conditions at the plants. On the nights of the disaster, water inadvertently entered a tank containing about 42 tons of MIC, triggering a runaway chemical reaction. The increase in pressure and temperature inside the tank caused a massive leak of MIC gas and other poisonous chemicals. The safety mechanisms designed to neutralize leaks, such as refrigeration and scrubbers, either malfunctioned or had been turned off to save costs. The toxic gas cloud spread quickly over nearby residential areas, where tens of thousands of people were sleeping. Many awoke coughing, choking, and with burning eyes, and panic spread as the gas caused immediate health effects, including nausea, breathlessness, and blindness. The dense slums surrounding the plants were particularly vulnerable, and within hours, thousands of people were dead, and chaos gripped the city as hospitals were overwhelmed. Official estimates suggest around 3,000 people died within the first few days, while subsequent estimates put the death toll at over 15,000 due to long-term health complications. An estimated 500,000 people were exposed to the gas, leading to chronic illnesses, respiratory issues, blindness, and birth defects in the years that followed. The Bhopal gas tragedy sparked widespread outrage and legal battles over corporate responsibility. Union Carbide faced international criticism, but survivors of this tragedy have struggled for decades to obtain adequate compensation and healthcare.
The Bhopal gas tragedy is like the dark origin story of corporate cost cutting. Union Carbide literally turned off the safety systems to save a few bucks, because apparently don't poison half a city wasn't in the budget. Wild fact, survivors reported that fish died in local lakes for years afterward, and kids born decades later still show effects. It's one of those disasters where the cover-up and legal battles lasted longer than the actual leak. Tragedy turned into a generational curse.
The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster occurred on January 28, 1986, when NASA's shuttle exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff, killing all 7 crew members aboard. The launch took place at Kennedy Space Center in Florida and was highly anticipated because it included a schoolteacher who was set to be the first civilian in space. The disaster was caused by the failure of an O-ring, a rubber seal in one of the solid rocket boosters, and the shuttle was launched on a particularly cold morning, with engineers having raised concerns that the low temperatures could affect the O-ring's elasticity. Despite these warnings, NASA proceeded with the launch, and shortly after liftoff at 11:39 a.m., the faulty O-ring failed, allowing hot gases to escape, damaging the external fuel tank. This led to a catastrophic failure as flames burned through the tank, causing the shuttle to break apart in midair. The explosion was broadcast live on television, shocking the world, and all 7 crew members aboard Challenger were killed as the crew cabin plunged into the ocean. The exact moment of death is uncertain, but it is believed that the crew survived the initial breakup and lost consciousness during the descent.
The Challenger disaster was basically a case of frozen rubber ring versus billion-dollar spaceship, and spoiler, the rubber won. Engineers had literally begged NASA not to launch in the cold, but management pushed ahead because, schedules look good on TV. Fun fact, physicist Richard Feynman later demonstrated the O-ring failure on live TV with nothing but a glass of ice water. The tragedy became a textbook case of how bureaucracy and PR pressure can override plain old common sense.
The Chernobyl disaster, one of the worst nuclear accidents in history, occurred on April 26, 1986 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Pripyat, Ukraine. The accident occurred during a late-night safety test on reactor number 4, which simulated a power outage to test the reactor's emergency systems. However, a combination of operator error and fundamental design flaws in the reactor led to a catastrophic failure. During the test, the reactor's power output dropped to near zero, and an attempt to recover it led to instability. Operators disabled critical safety systems, and the reactor went out of control. A sudden power surge caused an explosion in the reactor core, blowing off the roof of the building and releasing massive amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere. earlier. Fires broke out and radiation spread across Europe, particularly affecting Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. The explosion immediately killed 2 plant workers, and in the days that followed, 28 emergency workers, including firefighters, died from acute radiation sickness after being exposed to extremely high doses while trying to contain the disaster. In total, it is estimated that about 50 direct deaths occurred due to the explosion in radiation. However, the long-term effects were far more severe. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated from the surrounding areas, and the exclusion zone around Chernobyl remains uninhabited to this day. The radiation exposure has been linked to thousands of cases of cancer, particularly thyroid cancer and other long-term health issues. Estimates suggest that the eventual death toll from radiation exposure could range from 4,000 to tens of thousands over the coming decades.
The wild part is the afterlife of Chernobyl. Thyroid cancer spiking, an exclusion zone turned accidental wildlife reserve, and a sarcophagus that needed a second sarcophagus. Saw fact bomb. Sweden's Forsmark plant, not the USSR, blew the whistle when their radiation alarms tripped. Awkward. Earlier, that RBMK reactor had a positive void coefficient and graphite-tipped control rods. Basically a go faster button during an emergency. It's what happens when bureaucracy speedruns physics.
The Columbine High School shooting, one of the deadliest school shootings in the United States history, took place on April 20th, 1999 in Littleton, Colorado. 2 senior students, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, carried out a carefully planned attack that shocked the nation. Harris and Klebold had been planning the attack for over a year, amassing firearms, homemade bombs, and ammunition. On the morning of the attack, they planted bombs in the school's cafeteria, intending for them to explode and cause mass casualties. When the bombs failed to detonate, they entered the school armed with semi-automatic weapons and began shooting indiscriminately. The attack started at approximately 11:19 a.m. as Harris and Klebold opened fire on students outside the school before moving inside. They roamed the halls and library, shooting at anyone they encountered, laughing and taunting their victims. The pair also engaged in a brief gunfight with the police, who had quickly arrived on the scene. The shooting spree lasted about 47 minutes, after which Harris and Klebold retreated to the library and committed suicide. In total, 12 students and 1 teacher were killed, and 21 others were injured by gunfire. Many more suffered from psychological trauma, and the Columbine shooting had a profound impact on the United States, leading to debates on gun control, school security, and the influence of violent media. It also sparked changes in how law enforcement responds to active shooter situations, and many survivors of this tragedy continue to advocate for stronger measures to prevent similar disasters. The tragedy of 9/11, occurring on September 11th, 2001, was a series of coordinated terrorist attacks carried out by the extremist group Al-Qaeda against the United States. It began with the hijacking of 4 commercial airlines by 19 terrorists, and at 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, another Boeing 767, struck the South Tower, and both buildings were severely damaged, with fires igniting on multiple floors. The attacks continued when American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, crashed into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. The 4th hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, was headed towards Washington, D.C., but passengers, aware of the earlier attacks, attempted to overcome the hijackers. The plane ultimately crashed into a field near Sharksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. It is believed that the hijackers intended to target either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed, followed by the North Tower at 10:28 a.m. The collapse of both towers caused massive destruction, including damage to surrounding buildings, and the eventual collapse of the World Trade Center complex. The attacks resulted in the deaths of 2,977 people, including 246 on the 4 planes, 2,606 in the World Trade Center and surrounding areas, and 125 at the Pentagon. Thousands more were injured, and the aftermath led a profound impact on global security policies and led to the U.S. War on Terror, which included the invasion of Afghanistan.
Still have Columbine in my head. It wasn't the first school shooting, but it was the one that rewired America's brain. Before 1999, schools didn't even have lockdown drills. Afterward, kids grew up practicing hide under the desk, like it was math class.
The Deepwater Horizon oil spill was one of the worst environmental disasters in U.S. history. It began on April 20th, 2010, when a blowout occurred on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig, which was drilling an exploratory well in the Gulf of Mexico. Owned by Transocean and leased by BP, the rig was situated about 41 miles off the coast of Louisiana. The blowout was caused by a surge of natural gas, which blasted through a concrete core that had been recently placed to seal the well. This gas traveled up the drilling pipe and ignited, leading to a massive explosion explosion on the platform. The explosion killed 11 workers on the rig and injured 17 others, and the rig burned for 2 days before sinking into the Gulf. Following the rig's collapse, the damaged wellhead continued to spew oil into the ocean for 87 days before it was successfully capped. By that time, it is estimated that 210 million gallons of crude oil had been released into the Gulf of Mexico. The spill caused widespread environmental damage, devastating oceanic ecosystems, harming wildlife, and polluting coastlines across 5 states. The region's fishing and tourism industries also suffered severe economic losses, and in response to this disaster, BP and the United States government initiated a massive cleanup effort involving skimming, controlled burns, and the use of chemicals to break up the oil. In the aftermath, BP and its partners faced multiple lawsuits, and BP paid billions in fines, penalties, and settlements. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster occurred on March 11, 2011, following a massive earthquake and tsunami off the coast of Japan. The magnitude 9.0 earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan, triggered a series of large tsunami waves, some reaching up to 40 meters in height. These waves overwhelmed the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant located in the Fukushima prefecture, operated by the Tokyo Electric Power Company. The tsunami flooded the plant, knocking out its power supply and disabling its cooling systems, which were essential for preventing overheating in the nuclear reactors. Without cooling, the reactors began to overheat, leading to 3 nuclear meltdowns over the next few days. Hydrogen gas built up in the reactor buildings, resulting in explosions that released radioactive materials into the air. The surrounding area became heavily contaminated, forcing the evacuation of over 150,000 people, and although there were no direct deaths from the radiation exposure in the immediate aftermath, the disaster's long-term health impacts are still being studied. However, it did cause stress-related deaths, especially among the elderly, due to the evacuation and subsequent displacement. Estimates suggest that around 1,600 people died from these indirect causes. The release of radioactive material also contaminated land, water, and food supplies, and the government designated a 20-kilometer exclusion zone around the plants. The cleanup process is ongoing and expected to take multiple decades, with significant challenges in decontaminating the reactors and storing radioactive waste. In the aftermath, the disaster prompted global scrutiny of nuclear safety, leading to reactor shutdowns and revised safety protocols in many countries. In Japan, the Fukushima disaster severely undermined public trust in nuclear energy and led to the temporary shutdown of all nuclear plants in the country.
Fukushima was the moment everyone realized Mother Nature can speedrun past fail-safe systems, but a 9.0 quake plus a 40-meter tsunami? That's like hitting a power plant with a tag team finishing move. Fun fact, the backup generators were stored in the basement, aka the first place a tsunami floods. Brilliant. The meltdown didn't just shake Japan's trust in nuclear, it spooked Germany so much they basically rage quit atomic energy overnight.
The Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting occurred on December 14, 2012 in Newtown, Connecticut, and remains one of the deadliest mass shootings in United States history. The tragedy began when Adam Lanza, a 20-year-old local resident, shot and killed his mother at their home before driving to Sandy Hook Elementary School. Armed with an assault rifle and other firearms, Lanza forced his way into the school by shooting through a glass window near the entrance. Once inside, Lanza opened fire on students and staff, and in the span of just 5 minutes, he killed 20 children between the ages of 6 and 7, along with 6 adult staff members. The staff included teachers and the principal, who tried to protect the children, and in the chaos, some children and teachers managed to hide, preventing further casualties. Lanza ended the massacre by taking his own life with a self-inflicted gunshot when police arrived at the scene. The shooting sent shockwaves across the country, igniting a fierce debate over gun control and school safety. It also led to widespread calls for legislative reform to prevent similar tragedies. In the aftermath, President Barack Obama and other political leaders pushed for stricter gun control measures, including background checks and bans on assault weapons. However, significant national legislation failed to pass, although some states implemented tighter gun laws. The Sandy Hook shooting had a profound and lasting impact on American society, especially in how schools approach security and how to properly prepare for an emergency like this. The victims are remembered annually, and the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation was created to advocate for gun violence prevention. The Boston Marathon bombing took place on April 15, 2013, during the annual Boston Marathon. 2 homemade bombs were detonated near the finish line, causing widespread devastation. The bombs, made from pressure cookers filled with shrapnel, exploded about 12 seconds apart in the crowded spectator area, killing 3 people and injuring over 260 others. Many of the injured suffered severe wounds, with several people requiring amputations. The perpetrators were later identified as 2 brothers, ethnic Chechens Americans who had lived in the United States for several years. The bombing triggered a massive manhunt as law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and local police, searched for the attackers. A breakthrough came on April 18th when the two brothers killed a police officer during their escape attempt. They later carjacked a vehicle, leading police on a high-speed chase and engaging in a shootout in the Boston suburb of Watertown. During the confrontation, one of the brothers were killed, but the other managed to escape. A citywide lockdown followed, and on April 19th, the surviving brother was found hiding in a boat in a Watertown backyard and was arrested. He was later convicted on multiple charges, including using a weapon of mass destruction, and was sentenced to death. The bombing shocked the nation and raised concerns about domestic terrorism, and the attack also led to enhanced security measures at large public events. The Las Vegas shooting, also known as the Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting, occurred on October 1st, 2017, and remains one of the deadliest mass shootings in United States history. The massacre took place during a country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip with over 22,000 attendees. The shooter, a 64-year-old man from Nevada, opened fire from the 32nd floor on the Mandalay Bay Hotel, where he had set up an arsenal of firearms. The shooter had checked into the hotel several days earlier, bringing with him 23 guns, many of which were equipped with bump stocks, devices that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire more rapidly. At approximately 10:05 p.m., during singer Jason Aldean's performance, the shooter began firing into the crowded festival grounds below, unleashing more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition. The shooting lasted for about 10 minutes, as panicked concert goers tried to flee the scene. In total, 58 people were killed in the attack, and over 850 others were injured, either by gunfire or in the chaos that ensued. The shooter's motivations remain unclear, as he left no manifesto or clear explanation for his actions, and despite extensive investigations by the FBI and local authorities, no conclusive motive was determined. After the shooting, he took his own life before law enforcement breached the hotel room, and this shooting renewed debates over gun control, particularly the use of bump stocks, which were subsequently banned by the Trump administration in 2018. In the aftermath, the Las Vegas community came together under the slogan Vegas Strong to support the victims, their families, and the survivors of this horrific attack. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below what other historical events you would like to see me cover in the future, and subscribe if you're interested to continue to learn more. Thank you again, and goodbye.
History has this unnerving way of reminding us that progress always comes with shadows. Every invention, every leap forward, has its disasters etched in blood, smoke, or silence. From ships and shuttles to oil rigs and classrooms, each story shows how fragile normal really is when pressure, arrogance, or chance collide. And yet, learning these moments keeps us from sleepwalking into the same mistakes. By the way, Jaden History did an amazing job putting this video together. The link is in the description. Next time, let's just say we'll be diving into another story that might surprise you more than you expect. Stay nerdy.